Hello, 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 and welcome. Hello, and welcome to Cups and Truth, the broadcast. I'm welcoming you here today. I am so excited today for what's happening. But before I do that, I wanted to say that this is a Bible based broadcast where I believe that the Bible is true, that the Bible talks about God's character, and that you can find salvation in the Bible. Also, I for this year, my word is expectant, and I'm doing that also with Cups and Truth. I'm expecting God to just do great things and just to grow everything exponentially. And we are just going to have a good time here with the guests that will be invited on. So, in talking about great things and guests that are being invited on, I want to introduce to you a great author, someone that I found just to be wonderful, a wonderful book that I picked up for my book club. It's called Sugar Birds by Cheryl Gray Bostrom. And it turned out to be phenomenal. But right now, I want to bring her into the studio. Hello and welcome. How
Good,
are
m-
you?
good morning, or good. I guess it's lunchtime.
It's
Hi,
right now,
Debbie.
good afternoon. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
so funny. I totally forgot about I have a 12 o'clock alarm just for prayers and things like that. And it went off and I was fumbling around before I got on. Surprised me. But anyway, yes, I was telling everyone that how great we're going to have the Lord's going to be this year on this broadcast, but how great the person I invited on today. But let me read a few things. Now, this Cheryl Gray Bostrom has done some wonderful things, and I want you to know that she has won all these awards from the book that I showed you in 2021, the American Fiction Award in Literary Fiction, General Fiction, Cross Gender Fiction, and New Reader's Favorite Silver Medal in 2021. And Cheryl, you won a new one just recently. Tell us what that is.
Well, it was just such a thrill because it won the Award of Merit for Christianity Today.
Oh,
And my prayer was that it would, as in that American fiction assessment, that it was a cross genre fiction, that it would move from the general market into the Christian market. And now with that award, it did. So I was quite
oh,
thrilled.
this is wonderful. I'm telling you, it was. I heard from this book from a good friend of ours, and I was reading on her Facebook, and she was talking about how good your book was, and I needed to pick a book for my book club, and I picked it, and I was a little concerned, because I have both Christian and non-Christian in this group, and but I went on the advice of this good friend of ours. In fact, she's on. Hi, Janet, and I went on her advice, and my goodness, it was such a hit with every single person in the book club. In fact, everyone said that sometimes I skim books, sometimes I look for good reads to figure out what the book is about. But this one I read. And audience, I need to tell you, the book is so good, so suspenseful. So what's happening with the character is that I did something I don't normally do. I went to the end because I had to find out that this one character was okay, and then I would finish reading it. It was so good. It's just so exciting. But before we get into the book, I wanted to say congratulations for all of those awards that you received.
Thanks, Debbie.
So deserving, so deserving. And I want everyone to know
To
that,
God's glory.
oh, yeah, to God be the glory, definitely. And I want everyone to know that I met Cheryl before the book club, and I was walking down a street near the beach. Cheryl was so much fun. I got 5 miles in that day because we talked and talked and talked, and I decided she was one of my new best friends. So, hello, friend. Welcome.
Likewise, Debbie.
Now, I know a little bit about you from that conversation that I had, but can you tell people a little bit about you? About, are you married? Do you have children? And kind of the area where you live. You don't have to tell us exactly where.
Oh, that's fine. I live in far northwest Washington, just almost shouting distance of the ocean and about a stone's throw from the border, the Canadian
Mm.
border. And we look out our east windows at the North Cascades, Mount Baker. So it's a really beautiful area of the country. And I've been married for 45 years
Woo!
to
Congratulations.
the man's a saint. And we've got 2 kids,
Yeah.
and they live on opposite coasts. And then each of them have a son and a daughter who range in age from 7, and a couple of 5-year-old boys in the middle, and then a little girl bringing up the rear. So, yeah.
Aw.
So this book is dedicated to my first grandchild, and I'm working on the one for the second now.
Oh, hear that? Fresh off the press. News, news, news. She's going to have another book coming out, and I know you're going to enjoy it. Can you tell us just kind of like briefly, maybe about your childhood that may or may not have played into the story?
Oh, it definitely did. Uh, Although everything and every character in the book is a composite, there's nobody. Whoops, sorry. There's nobody really represented in the characters, but there are
Mhm.
pieces of me and pieces of those I've known in all of the characters, as there always would be. And then the setting as well is part fictional, and I had to change the river quite a bit to get some of those dimensions the same. But
Mm.
I was raised on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington, and I was raised right at the foot of the Olympic Mountains and overlooking the Strait of Juan de Fuca. And when I was raised in the 50s and 60s, that was pretty wild country.
Mm.
And I grew up with a real tough. It was a tough home life. My mom had some mental health issues, and so does Aggie, the protagonist in the story. Her mom suffers from bipolar disorder that advances as the story is opening. Her mom's
Mhm.
becoming more ill as time goes, and Aggie's losing her. This lovely relationship she's had with her mother, she's losing her. And so that was familiar to me. And then there's a co-protagonist, Celia,
Mhm.
who I can identify elements in her life from my own teenage years, as well as in the many kids that I taught as a high school English teacher, and the sorts of decisions that they're making that can be transformative for their future. And so that was fun for me to be able to do that.
I found out something new that you were a high school English teacher, which, I wonder how many high school teachers, English teachers, end up writing their own novels. You hear about this, and you definitely did do that.
Yeah, it was a little terrifying to make that switch because I'd written short form nonfiction and long form nonfiction before. But once I turned 60, I thought I need to do this if I'm going to do it. And so I just dove in and learned everything I could. And I had always wanted to write a novel. And I have a lot of stories in me, and I think I've got a few more in me.
Oh,
So
that sounds wonderful. By the way, I'm sure the audience and I all agree that you do not even look like you're 60 or plus at all. At all. Okay. At all. So
Well, that's kind
That
of you.
that's great. Okay, so all right, considering that, like I said, the audience has not read your book, a few of us have, but let's consider that they haven't. Kind of tell us about some of the characters. You did already about the protagonist and the co-protagonist. Is there a few others that you might want to talk about?
There are. It's a story of where all of the characters are experiencing, all of the key characters are
Mhm.
experiencing their hungers. It's a book about hunger, and it's a book about love and the love of God in the created world. And so let me tell you a little bit about the setting first. Set in Northwest Washington, um, little Aggie, who's 10 years old, accidentally lights a tragic fire, and then believing that she has done something that's unforgivable, she flees into the forest and hides there, where those who are looking for her can't find her. And this little girl, who is just being pursued by all these people who love her and want to bring her home, thinks that they're after her and they're going to put her in juvie. So she enters, through her guilt and her shame about what she's done, she enters this wilderness that's physical wilderness in the story, but it's representative of the emotional and the spiritual wildernesses that we can enter as if we're carrying a load of guilt or a load of shame that's unforgiven. And so that's Aggie. Her mother, Bree, as I mentioned, is struggling with mental illness.
Mhm.
Her dad is an arborist and has left the Alaska Forest Service, and they're seed farmers in the Northwest. And he has taught his daughter Aggie about the ways of the woods.
Mhm.
She knows how to forage. She knows how to track animals, and he has also taught her how to sketch the nests of wild birds as an antidote to her sadness. And he tells her when she goes into these woods to look for the father's song, which would be musical, but
Mhm.
then to draw what she hears. So there's this cross sensory experience that he wants her to get out of creation. And he's taught her and her brother Burnaby, who is on the autistic spectrum,
Mhm.
he's taught them the catechism. They worship at home because their mother won't let the kids out of her sight to go to church, and so he's taught her a lot about the Lord, but he wants her to experience God's character as it's represented in the natural world. So it's really a nature novel, and I have a lot in there about the natural world, which I hope readers find fascinating. But that has a lot to do with my upbringing as well, because we found a lot of solace in the natural world. So, okay, so then there's Burnaby, and then there's Cabot, who's
Good
he's
looking.
he's very good looking.
Very good looking.
Yeah, but that's intentional. It's not just it's not just
Mhm.
gratuitous
Yeah.
handsomeness. He's intended to be a distraction to Celia, and to have the external eclipse her discernment about what's going on internally with him. But the kid's really a narcissist, and he's interested in her only because of what she can do for him.
Mhm.
And so as she becomes more involved with him, that becomes apparent to the reader before it really becomes apparent to her. And that creates an awful lot of suspense in the story.
Oh,
And
it
his
did. It really did. I have to stop you there. It really did, to the point that I want my teenage granddaughters to read this, because how alluring, how like the enemy to put something beautiful, dangle something handsome and beautiful in front of you, that almost is good to be true. And it is,
yeah, yeah.
because of his problems. Yeah.
Well, and I didn't want him to be a caricature either.
Yeah.
He's suffered his own
Hmm.
heartbreak,
Yeah.
and consequently he has his own hungers for approval,
Amen.
and but we all have decisions to make when we run into those things, and the decisions that he makes are very different than the ones that Celia makes or the ones that Aggie eventually makes, and then there's Mender, who's the grandmother, Celia's
Yeah.
grandmother. And Celia's dad, Wyatt, is an exploration geologist. And he has to take a job. This is in the 80s when, the oil industry was tanking and there was a lot of upheaval. They're from Houston. And this dad has taken a job on an offshore rig, exploring some of these new potential drilling sites off the coast of Brazil, and she can't come with him. Celia can't come with him, but she has connected with a friend who's really not very good for her and is really encouraging her to behave in ways that just make her dad crazy. And so he tricks her and gets her to come to the Northwest. And so she feels abandoned by her father. Aggie is left by her father because of this accident that she causes. And both of those girls' lives really change without the presence of their fathers,
Hmm.
and so it gives us pause, and I think in a culture where many of the male characters in these books are sidelined or are not appealing, supportive fathers, I wanted to illustrate the power of fatherhood in
Amen.
this story, whether it's our Father in heaven or our earthly
Mhm.
fathers who are
Mhm.
representative of him.
Mhm. Oh, it was so good, because as I was reading it and as I was becoming agitated of, with Kevin and the other little things in the book, here was, Aggie remembering what her father told her to do to be safe in the forest, which is amazing. That was she 10, that she was,
Mm-hmm.
remembering all of this and that. But then I think of my 10-year-old granddaughters, and I think they would definitely be precocious enough to remember all that and to do all that, but how you brought in God the Father, which her father had told her about anyway, to see God the Father in the things that she was doing. And so, and she remembered, because so it was a great story. And that's why I would like to have young readers read this. A great
Mm,
story that when you're frightened, if you something happens and you're alone, you always have your Father, God the Father, with you. You know, you're
mhm,
not abandoned. And so I just thought that was brilliantly, you did that brilliantly. Thank you.
mm, thank
That
you.
was so good. And there were times, yes, in this book, you need your Kleenex. There are times in this book, yes, you are, yes, there are times in this book that you were really angry. I was angry. You're like, why did that happen? Type of thing. But it's so good. All right. So let me get back to this. So, um, after getting the idea of the book, how did you go about just developing all this? So you kind of mentioned it. You some of is your background. Some of it you sounds as though you had to go and explore the different areas and learn about rivers and how they turn and dimensions and things like that. What did you have to do to develop this book?
Well, I tapped a lot of my childhood experiences, because my grandparents were big nature lovers, and my granddad was an Alaska pioneer, and they had
Yeah.
grown, and they were they know the flora and fauna, and so I was raised with that. But I had to check all that. I had to check all that because I'd always assumed that the things they had told me were true, but I had to fact check. And if in the front of the story, there's a in the front of the novel, there's a map,
Okay.
and I just want to just give you a little flash of that. Hold on. Whoops. Okay. And you see the river running down through the middle there.
Mm-hmm.
We changed that river, oh, I don't know, 5 or 6 times, because the length of time that it had to take for Aggie to float down that river had to work with Burnaby, her brother, riding his bike to the dairy. So even figuring out all the mileages, and how long it would take to get downriver, how long it would take Burnaby to ride. So there were just geographical logistics to work out. But I wanted to write a story with a compelling plot, but I didn't want the characters to be just tools to the
Yes.
plot. I wanted it to be character driven. And so there were plot elements that I thought I had worked out, that I thought were going to absolutely happen. But when I started writing those characters, they told me otherwise. And that was interesting. It was fun. And they came in, the plot developed incrementally too, because um, I knew more about what was going to happen to Aggie than I did about Celia. And then I'm praying all the way through on how God would have me reveal his presence in this book. And I didn't always know how that was going to play out. Lots of times I would just wait for it so that I would actually feel like the UPS girl. I like to use that example, that I'm just delivering the goods. So.
Well, what was so interesting about your book, and you mentioned it already, but you sort of talked about these things that people keep hidden with, like bipolar,
Mhm.
about autism, about narcissism, and these are things that I felt that you brought to the forefront for women and you could help someone understand that. I know that in our book club, one of the ladies had a grandson who was having different sort of problems, and she was very appreciative of you bringing that to light.
Mhm.
And making people become more aware, and as we were becoming more aware of things, I'm not going to use that word awaken, but we're all becoming more aware of all these things. It's not hidden anymore. And as a teacher of primary school, of elementary school, it was so hard so many times to explain to parents that your child needed some extra, something special help that regular classroom teacher could not do. So I was very appreciative that you had those elements in there, and that's why this book goes beyond just a fiction. It's bringing people to salvation, and it's also bringing to light all these medical issues. And so I thank you for that. You know, I think there was even alcoholism in the book. So this was so good. You this is very well written, you know.
Thank you.
Okay.
You know, Debbie, another thought that was really important to me, because it is what propels my life, is
Yeah.
the healing nature of God, and that He heals creation, He heals lives, and that there's nothing too hard for Him to redeem. And in this story, where the tragedy that occurs is one that no one should ever have to go through, much less a 10-year-old child. And she grapples with the nature of God. She at one point she says, some father, God is always, because her dad had told her that God was always good. She's going, good, how could He be good in this? And then as the story unfolds and you watch this redemption occur, hopefully it gives readers pause just to realize that there's nothing too terrible that God can't transform it. And not in a cliche sort of way, because it takes a while, even when she's carrying this load of guilt and she finally remembers, from the catechism, the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our debts. And she's going, will He really take it? Will He really take my debts off of me? And she just unloads to God, by herself. She just empties herself. And her life doesn't change instantly, even though something powerful has happened inside of her. The story continues. And then the reader can see this transformation that is occurring in her. She doesn't see it. But by the end of the story, you realize that redemption is often gradual. And I mean, that the redemption itself is immediate, but the expression of it comes like the tide. It's like the advance of water on a shore, and it's approaching in the same way the kingdom is approaching. And so, yeah.
Oh no, that's so good. That was so good. Wow. Oh, that was wonderful. No, that was exactly what the readers that I was with experienced, and
Good.
some healing with a couple of the ladies who had gone through things in their life, and
Mm.
watching the character and reading the character Aggie, they walked through some of their own dilemmas and their own problems, and saw the big overall theme of God's forgiveness, that
Mm.
you had in your book, so amazing. I also, what I failed to tell you when I was talking to you, that after the ladies I was with, after we finished reading and interviewing with you, we talked for another hour and a half.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, because there
That's
was
great.
people were just, it was just this outpouring of what the
Mm.
book was doing and had done for them. So
Mm.
such a great book. Well, we're getting close to the end, but not to the very end. And the very end, I want Cheryl to read one of her favorite passages out of the book. But is there anything else you want to say about the book, or anything else about you that you want us to know?
No, just thank you for supporting it, Debbie. Really, it's to God's glory that this book is where it is. And
Mhm.
I just pray that as you read it, uh, you will come away blessed. And yet, you're going to enter some places of real dark suffering. But I don't think it's a dark book.
Mm-mm,
It's not.
mm-mm,
That's
mm-mm.
and and that I suspect that you'll find characters that you identify with because they're real people.
Mhm.
And we are all hungry and we're all beloved.
I have to tell
So,
people that that is, again, that's wonderful, and that's exactly what this book does. It's life, it's human life, and what we go through. And I love how you, like you said, you kind of walk redemption all the way through, and let people see that you are on a road to redemption by all these little things that you do as you're walking, and we saw Aggie walk through all of these pains, and then keep asking, keep wondering why, and then finally getting her answer. And that's what makes it so beautiful. Well, one of the things in the book that after a while you keep going in the book. You go, sugar birds, sugar birds. How does that relate to the story? And I want to tell my listeners today, we're not going to tell you because we want you to
Good.
read the book. Read the book. And it's amazing what it means. Okay. There is a lot happening with birds in this book. I'm going to give you another clue with that. And so, and kind of a life around these birds with a couple of the characters. There's so, you it's amazing how you played on everything. I mean, even a truck, that what goes on around this truck, that this is nothing you left out, So it's amazing of this book. And I highly recommend it. My highest recommendation. Okay. And also, um, I'm reading Janet's real quick. Yeah, it's very suspenseful. It was one of those books I couldn't put down. And that's why at the beginning of the show, I said, I went to the end real fast because I had to find out that this one character made it okay. And then I went back and I could read it again.
I've done that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of those kind of books, everybody.
Yeah.
All right. Now, can you read your favorite part of the book, your favorite passage?
Yes, and I just changed my mind over what we had talked about earlier.
Oh, okay.
But at the start of the story, she climbs a lot of trees to find these bird nests, and her dad, with her father under her, she feels safe. But this is a scene where she's climbing to look at these eggs in a crow's nest, and then her mother comes upon her. And I don't know how our time is, but I think I can get this in here. Good. Okay. So here's Aggie. Her eyes crawled up the old fir to a dark cluster of twigs where a sharp-beaked silhouette brooded her eggs. The male crow watched Aggie from an adjacent tree and bobbed to his mate, who waddled from the nest and hopped to a nearby branch. Aggie tilted her head at them and pressed a finger to her lips. "Nothing to worry about," she whispered. "I just want to see 'em." The fir was an easy one, the nest only the height of a telephone pole. She had scaled trees like this, 100 times? 500? With no sign of Mama, she entered the tree, her feet and hands deliberate as she climbed, her movements brisk. Boughs heavy with needles offered a quick ladder. The silent crows watched, squatting, wings poised, their necks stretched low. Halfway up, the foliage grew sparser, and her heart raced at her high visibility. If Mama had followed, she would spot her for sure. Aggie picked up her pace, planting her foot on a limb the diameter of her wrist, and, without testing its strength, pulled her full 55 pounds onto it. The limb snapped. A flailing arm snagged a branch, and she dangled, scrambling for toeholds. Both birds squawked and took to the sky, spreading the alarm. Startled sparrows launched from the grass below as the crows circled and dove. Aggie found her footing and braced against the onslaught. When a beak speared her shoulder, she pawed the air behind her, intercepted a crow across its breast, and flung it sideways. Both birds arced skyward, protesting as she hoisted herself to the bole of the nest and peered inside. There, arranged in a circle like the petals of a flower, the olive green eggs' narrow tips touched at the center. 5, she said to the raucous hovering birds, and stuck her thumb in the air. A thrill surged through her. In 2 weeks, she'd begin to visit daily. Though the crows were sure to jab her a few more times, they'd get used to her, like they all did. When she watched their first egg hatch, she'd memorize it and draw the cracked shell and emerging beak. She'd record every hatchling in her book, just like Dad taught her. Now, though, she had to move fast, and the fir's twiggy branches slowed her descent. A young birch, skinny and limbless as a fire pole, intersected a bough below her. Yes, the birch would give her a straight shot to the ground. She sidestepped along a horizontal limb until it narrowed dangerously, then leaned into the thin tree, caught the trunk, and swung her weedy body over. With a bear cub's grip, she shinnied lower until a shriek ricocheted through the woods. "Aggie!" The crows vanished into the trees. Still clamped around the trunk, Aggie arched backwards as her mother appeared.
Woo! I love that. And remember that. And I know what happens next. Oh, Cheryl, thank you so much. This has
Thanks for
been
having me.
wonderful. It's been rich. I cannot, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot say it enough. This is a very good read, and it's a book that you'll keep, and share with friends to come. So thank you so much. God bless you. You don't go away. I'm just going to talk to the audience for a second. Stay there. Oh, thank you so much, everybody. This has been another great interview with I cannot tell you what a great suspenseful book, and also full of God's forgiveness. And so I hope that you read this. Until I see you again next month, we will have someone coming to talk to us about marriage and about sex in our marriage. And so stay tuned for that in February. Okay. Love everybody. See you soon. Bye bye.